It's good to have you with us for the second edition of India Votes here on France 24. I'm Delana D'Souza, and on the show today we will be continuing our focus on the world's largest democracy as voters head to the polls in an election that's seen as a referendum on the Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Let's first go across New Delhi and speak to our correspondent Mandakini Galot. Mandakini, what's the mood like in India? The opinion polls say Modi will likely return to power, but is this really a done deal for the Prime Minister?
Well, the parliamentary elections always come with a festival-like atmosphere, so there's great excitement amongst voters. But as to the question of which way this country will swing, that's a little bit harder to say. The exit polls, which are usually unreliable, are all predicting a victory for Prime Minister Modi's Bharatiya Janata Party-led alliance, but with a smaller margin than they had back in 2014, and there are a couple of reasons for that. Now, back in 2014, the Prime Minister rode to victory on the back of a promise to create millions of jobs. And it really doesn't help his cause that India is in the grips of a very severe unemployment crisis, possibly its worst in several decades. So there is great discontent amongst young voters, those under the age of 25, first-time voters. Now, in rural India, wages are falling. Farmers, too, are looking at a very dire economic situation. So that's another group where there's a lot of discontent. Those are the two groups that the Bharatiya Janata Party is possibly quite worried about. Then there's the question of the religious minorities, particularly the Muslims, who account for about 7 to 8% of the electorate, and they've seen hate crimes rise against their community in the last 5 years, and are also possibly feeling alienated by the BJP's current campaign with its focus on Hindu nationalism. But what the BJP understands very keenly is that they don't need to win all the seats or all the votes in order to win in this country's first-past-the-post system. After all, in 2014, they rode to victory, and that huge victory, which is 30% of the vote. So there's probably some furious number crunching going on, both at the BJP and their main rival, Congress, at their headquarters. But we'll just have to wait till May 23rd to find out.
Indeed. Mandakini, thank you very much for that update. Now, soon after coming to power in 2014, the Prime Minister launched the Make in India program. The initiative was intended to lure global firms to manufacture in India. 5 years on, the program has failed to make a major difference to the Indian economy, and foreign firms remain reticent on setting up manufacturing hubs in India. France 24's team on the ground filed this report.
With that last photo op done, it's finally time for the Vande Bharat Express, India's first semi-high-speed train to depart from New Delhi. Manufactured entirely in India, this train is a symbol of Prime Minister Modi's flagship economic policy called Make in India. Built at a cost of 12 million euros, the train has reduced travel time by half and won the approval of its passengers.
India is ready to compete with any nation.
It's a good start, and we'll look forward that this kind of train should come.
Launched amidst great fanfare, the train represents a success for the Make in India program. But to replicate this success, India urgently needs to upgrade the skills of its large workforce. In this institute in New Delhi, a special program funded by Make in India trains at least 2,000 students each year.
Before, I didn't have confidence, and so I would get rejected in every interview. I decided to come to this training center where all kinds of facilities are available. None of these facilities are available in my village.
But for economists like Mihir Sharma, the Make in India program has not lived up to its main promise of turning India into a manufacturing hub like neighboring China.
You have to make it easier for investors. You have to reduce the bureaucracy. You have to reduce the tax burden until you convince investors, whether in India or in the rest of the world, that India is a stable, reliable place to do business. They're not going to come here. Then we're not going to create the jobs at the scale that we need.
With the unemployment rate at 6%, India is currently facing its worst jobs crisis in 45 years.
Now, for more analysis on the Indian election, we can bring in Audrey Trushke, Assistant Professor of South Asian History at Rutgers University. Thank you very much for joining us on the program today. Now, Prime Minister Modi is known around the world for schemes like the Make in India program. What is less known is that his BJP party, with the help of the RSS, has been rewriting school textbooks. What exactly are they trying to do here?
Well, Delano, first off, thank you for having me on the program today. So, Modi's government has been engaged in a fairly large-scale attempt, on regional levels, to rewrite school textbooks. And the details differ, and depending on the case and state to state, but the basic idea is to create this sort of mythologized history of sort of a Hindu glory story, which everything's going great in India until the big bad Muslim invaders show up around 1200. CE. And then everything sort of goes bad. After that, you have 600 years of enslavement of a Hindu majority population, and that's, sort of a methodology, a sort of vocabulary that the Modi government has used, the vocabulary of slavery. Colonialism, we don't talk too much about, and then you have Modi come into the picture, right? And the BJP is going to return India to its sort of pristine Hindu glory days. That is the narrative. Now,
speaking of the Muslim invaders, because you wrote a book, very controversial, might I add, Aurangzeb, The Life and Legacy of India's Most Controversial King. You received a lot of criticism. What exactly rubbed people the wrong way?
Well, I set out to do a sort of very basic thing that historians do, which is to write an even-handed biography of a major figure from the 17th century and to understand him as a man of his time, not of our time, and to understand him on his own terms. In doing that, what I explicitly did not do, I did not condemn Aurangzeb using 21st century standards, and I did not say that he was the worst guy that ever lived.
He wasn't all that bad, essentially.
No, I didn't say that either.
But you weren't saying he was good either.
No, I simply would ask a different set of questions. And in doing that, I push back against the BJP narrative and their sort of mythology of history, and I do so with a very powerful set of tools, namely grounded, concrete historical analysis. That makes somebody like me very threatening to the sort of Hindutva mission in India.
But why, in your opinion, is, there's a portion of the Indian population that is so caught up in the past when instead they should be looking at the future?
Well, it is all about the present and the future, right? When people talk about how much they hate Aurangzeb Alamgir and all the bad things that they think he did, many of which he did not actually do, they're not talking about whether this stuff actually happened 300 to 400 years ago. What they're doing is using the past as a way to talk about the present, right? They're hating on India's most hated Muslim king from the past as a way to signal acceptance, if anything, necessity of hating on Muslims in India's present.
Painting them as the other.
That is correct.
How dangerous? How dangerous is that?
I think very dangerous. In the last 5 years, we've seen a major uptick of sort of religious-based violence targeting India's minority populations.
Beefeaters and such.
Exactly. And Muslims, as the largest religious minority in India, have borne the brunt of that Hindutva hatred.
Now, speaking of your book, you face a lot of backlash, as I was saying. Have you sensed that there's been this overt nationalism in the country over the past 5 years? I mean, things have gone from bad to worse because, for instance, I was talking to friends in India. You still have to stand, for the national anthem every time you watch a movie, whether you're in Mumbai, whether you're in Delhi, even though the Supreme Court has said that doesn't need to happen.
Right. And I would say to add to that, the sort of the nationalism is so extreme now that it seems that some people can't even think outside of that rhetoric, whether it makes sense or not. So, for example, people increasingly tell me, particularly on social media, to go back to Pakistan. Right. I'm not an Indian citizen, nor do I live in India. That makes absolutely no sense. Right. This is just sort of the only way that they know of talking and increasingly of thinking is through this sort of ultra-nationalist model that is ultimately based on hatred.
But do you think you can put the genie back into the bottle?
I have absolutely no idea, but I think we should try.
We should try. Thank you very much for that, Audrey Trushke, for joining us on the program today.
Thank you.
It's time now to hear directly from a voter in India, thanks to our team at the France 24 Observers. This week, we focus on the air quality in the country, which is notoriously toxic. 15 of the 20 most polluted cities on Earth are in India, according to recent analysis by Greenpeace. Tiny particles of pollution get into the lungs and can cause major health problems and premature death. India's pollution is made worse by rapid urbanization. Air pollution only made it into the major parties' campaigns in early April. The opposition Congress Congress called it a national health crisis, and the ruling BJP promised to cut pollution in 100 cities. Now, Vijay Nishant is a former engineer who quit his job to become an urban conservationist. He's known as the tree doctor of Bangalore. Take a listen to what he has to say.
Bengaluru is known as a green city and garden city of India, but for a couple of years there is a huge distance between the political class and the people of Bengaluru, because there are a lot of projects being announced and there is not even a single public consultation has been done. People are kept fighting for their trees, the lakes and the environment. If you see the fate of other cities also, it's the same, like Delhi, Bombay and other cities also choking with the bad air and everything. Today political class really don't have any clue what they're trying to do and everything. What we are asking is like they have to have a sustainable development. Nobody is against development, where the green and the development goes in hand in hand. But all the project is made in the name of the money. That is causing a huge concern in this part of the world. People are like very, very concerned about these activities, what the political class is doing it. But there is a huge awareness has to be spread in the urban setup also.
Save Bengaluru, save trees!
That was this week's Observer talking about their hopes for the future of India. Join us again at the same time next week for a new edition of India Votes. From all of us on the team, thank you very much for watching.